Over here. Sorry I didn't meet you at the docks. You're actually a bit early. I'm impressed and very grateful. A lot of new hires just end up never showing up at all. So I'm very glad you came. I had a good feeling about you, so it's nice to be proven right. Did you have much trouble getting here? The first time can be difficult. This isn't exactly the easiest place to get to. Believe me, I know. I got lost quite a few times before I finally found my way. But that was, many years ago now. It gets easier, I promise. Well, since you are here, why don't I go ahead and show you the grounds house? Since you're early, there isn't really anything prepared. There was going to be some refreshments for you. Something to eat and some brew while introductions were made. But that can still come a bit later. Come on. This is the grounds house. It's not far from the main gate. Honestly, house may be a bit of an exaggeration. It's really just a big shed that's been added on to over the years to give the groundskeepers some place to be. It wasn't really designed with them in mind. Get used to that. It's a thankless job from most, despite how vital it actually is. But the house is standing, no broken windows, and it's watertight. Looks a bit gloomy, but it has its charm. After you. See, I told you it's not so bad. Kinda homey. The night air gets a bit chilly, so I did manage to get the fire going. There's a small kitchen and pantry. Won't be cooking any fine cuisine, but it's better than a campfire. Through there are the bunks. There's 4 bunks, and 3 of them are currently unoccupied, so you have your pick of it. Showers through that door. Small, but there is hot water. Courtesy of a charm, specially crafted by the guild, with a spell that won't interfere with any of the magic woven over the graveyard. A lot trickier than you'd think. I'll explain more about that later. This room is the study. You'll probably be spending a lot of time in here. As you can see, there are multiple maps on the walls. Each one is a map of the graveyard, but displays a different magical grid currently in effect. Well, the main ones anyway. There are swaths of magics floating around in here. A lot of it undocumented, or lesser charms that are recorded in other ways. We can go over those in a moment. The graveyard is divided into 5 courts. These courts are deep crescents, with the focal point being the gate. The gate is the one way in and the one way out. From the gate, the courts go as followed. The respected dead, followed by the malicious dead, then the nameless dead, and lastly, the ancient dead. The 5th court, the uninvited dead, are a bit of an outlier. Their graves are sporadically dispersed through the graveyard. As their name suggests, they are graves that just appeared, not ones that were permitted or buried here intentionally. As was made clear to you before you took this position, this is not a normal graveyard. No new residents are accepted, except in rare or extreme circumstances. There are large pockets of the uninvited graves, particularly here, between the respected and the malicious, and a few here, here, and here amongst the nameless. But otherwise, you'll see them spread out all over the graveyard. The only places you will never see an uninvited grave is in the respected court and in the ancient court. That doesn't mean the spirits won't wander there, but you will never see the graves show up in those locations. Likely because in the respected court the soil is permeated with holy magic. And the ancients, well, they don't really like intruders in their court. It's rare now for an uninvited to appear. There is such a thick web of various magics that it keeps the majority of them out. Similarly, the magic is also keeping them in. So even if one does manage to get in, it won't be getting back out. Most of the uninvited graves here have been here a long time. Some of them are still annoyed about it, but it's been long enough they don't make much of a fuss. Though they do tend to get mischievous. I'll go over the courts with you more in depth as we tour the grounds. For now, direct your attention to the different maps. You'll notice that on each of them there's a pattern of woven lines, webs, and grids. These are the ley lines of the magic. This map, with the green lines, this is the resonance grid. This magic maintains the graveyard's appropriate resonance and keeps it in harmony with the natural and the unnatural world. This map with the blue lines is the pacifism barrier. This magic pacifies a great deal of exertion that the dead would be able to have on the physical world. Many of the dead do possess their own magics. This barrier suppresses that. It's particularly useful against the malicious court, because they retain such a great well of energy. It also actively drains and feeds on malice. The more malice the barrier consumes, the stronger it is, and the more force it exerts. So it's in the dead's best interest to play nice. Next, the golden map. This is holy magic. You'll notice right away that the respected dead is absolutely lit up with it. Most of the respected dead are blessed, one way or another, and buried with holy rites. Their purified spirits permeate their court, and it serves as a major barrier between the gate and the other courts. But the golden lines also encircle the entire graveyard, and you can see a lot of concentration in a few areas of the malicious court. This is to keep some of the most dangerous residents in check. Unlike the other magics, the holy lines are a lot more sparse. Holy magic is not something you want spread too thin. That's why it's mostly used as a barrier around the graveyard as a whole, and around some of the greatest evil within. The red-lined map is entrapment, pure containment magic. It's very rigid compared to the other magics, very grid-like. The containment magic actually lays atop all the other magic, holding it together. It's very grid-like and meticulously woven. It's a barrier of both physical and spiritual. You yourself would not be able to pass through this. You'll notice this barrier actually extends beyond the border of the graveyard. Should anyone wander too close, they will not be able to leave without your escort. Not that you'll get many trespassers, but the security is in place just in case. No one who willingly seeks out a place like this usually has benevolent motives. It's why you had to undergo such a thorough inspection before getting approved. Going along with the barrier magic, you can see this map is also a bit different from the rest. The purple lines of magic are all outside the graveyard. This works hand in hand with the containment magic. You'll notice it has long tendrils radiating out from the edge of the cemetery. This is where the magic was originally laid, and its strongest ley line. But this is not static magic. This is a scanner and a lure. It weaves around the forest to detect any spark of life or unlife. Once it detects it, it scans the target to discern whether it's natural or unnatural, and whether or not its presence is concerning. If it detects something that is in disharmony, something that should not be here, physically or otherwise, it will draw it into the barrier so it cannot escape. You'll be notified if this occurs, so you can discern whether or not to allow what it's captured to leave. It usually captures spirits, but spirits have to try hard to get close to the graveyard from the outside. The huge amount of magic concentrated here can be felt for miles in all directions, in the spiritual and physical realm. Another form of repellent, it's why you don't see any animals around. Well, any of the normal ones, anyway. The magic here has warped the ecosystem around us to such a degree that it's become its own biome. The flora and the fauna within our sphere can't survive outside it, and those from the outside cannot survive within. The magic here is so ancient and so thick that after so many generations, nature here has evolved with it and has become distinct from any other environment in the world. So anything that's not meant to be here is very obvious to the magic. You yourself would not be able to leave without an escort, at least not right now. The longer you're here, the more you'll begin to resonate with it, and eventually it will be able to detect you as someone who belongs. The last two maps aren't showing anything new. This one is just a map with all the magics overlaid, so you can see the whole thing at a glance. It's the biggest because if it was any smaller, you wouldn't be able to make out the details between them. It'd just be one big blob. There's so much of it. The other here is just a map of the graveyard with no overlay at all. Useful if you're plotting routes or making notes about sections you want to review. You'll notice on all the maps indicating the magic are faintly glowing. This is to show you that they are active, intact and operational. If anything were to happen to one of the magic fields, its corresponding map would catch on fire. It won't actually burn the map, but it's a good way to get your attention. But honestly, if something went wrong, you would know. There are multiple alarm bells, and if a section of the magic has failed, the ley lines themselves would become aflame with the unburning fire. It is extremely rare that one of the main magics is disrupted, but even if it is, it's not cause to panic. They're drawn in such a way that even if one section fails, the whole thing isn't going to go down. Plus, there are 4 other main magic barriers in place, not even considering how many wards and charms exist all over the place. So even if it happens, it's not cause to panic. Now, away with the maps. Hopefully I haven't bored you to death about it. I know it's a lot of information, I'm just introducing you to it all right now. But don't worry if you forget. I don't expect you'll actually remember everything right away. It'll take time. That's why the apprenticeship lasts so long. You won't be left alone on a shift for at least a year, granted the training goes well, which I'm sure it will. You seem to have a good head on your shoulders. Results from your interviews and assessments were quite favorable, and the guild spoke highly of your prospects. Next, we'll go over some of the books. Still kind of boring, but very important. Once we go over a few of those, though, we'll start walking the grounds. The shelves are organized by information and record keeping. A lot of your time will be spent on records. You are expected to keep and maintain multiple types of records. Firstly, you'll keep the magic's record, a record of any wards, sigils, charms, or spells you cast, weave, or repair. Secondly, an encounter's record. This is a record of any interaction you've had with any of the residents, big or small. Any activity at all that you've noticed is to be documented. Even if it seems minor in the moment, it may indicate a pattern of behavior, so you'll want to document it to establish any connections between the events. There are actually 2 encounters records. The first one, which I just explained, where you'll document any activity, and a majors encounters record, where you'll record major events. Apparitions, communications, the like. Things that really stand out. You'll get a better idea of what counts as major activity versus a minor one, or more normal occurrence after you've been here a while. Thirdly, you have a guest book. This one won't be used quite as often, and you'll always know in advance when you'll be using it. But you'll document any guests who arrive on the premises, as well as the reason for their visit and the authorizing party. They'll also sign this book themselves to confirm their presence. Fourth, the most important of the records is your logbook. This is your main record where you'll record everything that happened during your shift. You'll also make note of if and what other record books you made any notes in. Even if it was quiet and nothing happened, you'll still need to get into the habit of writing your report. All keepers have their own, and all are expected to write their nightly logs. Even if there are multiple keepers on shift, you'll get to go over more examples of how to fill this out, and you'll find your own groove for doing so. Lastly is the Geminus. This is a magical book. Anything you write in it will appear in its twin tome at the guild headquarters. The guild has scribes whose job it is to receive and reply to incoming messages, so it never takes long to get a response. It's mostly used for supply drops. Supplies come by on a schedule, but you can submit any additional requests to be included. It's also good for arranging meetings or sharing information. The guild will regularly check in with you and will want you to communicate how things are going every few nights. They will also give you updates on the other graveyards around the continent and will pass messages between them in case you want to speak to any of the other gravekeepers. You can ask questions or seek advice from your peers. The scribes will send out your message to the others, and the one assigned to your Geminus will give you each of their responses. The Geminus stays on its pedestal so you can always quickly access it. The gem on the front cover will glow when a new message has arrived. Because of the way and the type of magic that's laid in this area, normal communication methods don't work. The Geminus is your only connection to the outside world. It's heavily warded, and the scribes in the guild monitor it around the clock. If anything is amiss with it, even slightly, they will dispatch a unit to investigate. A lot of the usual and even simple magics can struggle here. The graveyard interferes with mana in unpredictable ways. Methods of casting have been developed particularly for use in the graveyard, to the point it can be classified as its own discipline. It's actually quite complex and difficult to learn. It'll get easier as you become more in tune with the ecosystem here, but it will take some time. Alright, that's enough of this for now. You'll review more as you come to it. Grab that pack there and we'll head outside. Be sure to grab one of the lanterns hanging from the porch. Any one of them will do. Good observation. You're right. It's very similar to Fey light, but it's not quite the same. That light comes from a mana bloom that grows only in the graveyard. You'll never find it anywhere else in the world. If you were to carry it outside of the graveyard, its light would fade. Also important to note, I don't think I mentioned this when we were looking at the maps, but just to keep you from getting confused. Technically speaking, graveyard refers to the entire area affected by the magic here. About 20 miles in every direction. Here, where we're standing now, the epicenter of the magic, is the cemetery. Most keepers will still just call this a graveyard, but official documents from the guild will make that distinction. Just remember the term graveyard is used for both the cemetery and the surrounding environment when casually speaking. Anyway, behind the house there's also a tool shed. It'll have everything you could possibly need in there and then some. But you don't really need to go in there right now, so we'll leave it for later. That pack contains what you'll be using for now. It was prepared in advance so you could use it while you walk the grounds for the first time, just to get you accustomed to it. So, you've seen the gate and you've seen the house. Follow me and we'll move on to the next area. It's not far. Do you remember which court comes first? Yes, excellent. The court of the respected dead. Can you feel it as we get closer? That hum. That's holy magic. It gets stronger as you get deeper into the courts. I am elf-kind, so I can actually see the presence of magic. As we get closer to their court, the ground begins to sparkle with pure power. The holy magic tends to seep out towards the gate, so you can feel it growing stronger as you approach. With time and accumulation, you can train your eyes to see it as well. The court of the respected dead is the closest to the gate and helps uphold the barrier between the gate and the other courts. The respected dead completely block any route to the gate from the other courts. In order to reach it, spirits would have to wade through the thick river of holy magic, which is impossible for most of them. There it is. You feel it? We've officially crossed the barrier into their court. Those buried here, as their name implies, are highly respected. Be mindful of that as you traverse their court. Stick to the pathways and don't walk over the graves. If you have to, for some reason, make it known why and apologize for the intrusion. Even if it's necessary, just try to be thoughtful about it. It's not pleasant to have someone walk over your grave. Be courteous to those who dwell in this court. Most here are blessed in one way or another, and they have all chosen their resting places. All respected buried here are here because they asked to be. Consider them your allies. Within the cemetery, they are both the first and the last lines of defense. Their holy magic not only keeps anything from getting out, but also from getting in. Malicious spirits and those possessing dark magic cannot cross a holy barrier. As you saw from the map, most of the holy magic is concentrated here. That's because holy magic is delicate. It requires a continuous source, which the respected dead provide. Without them, the entire barrier of holy magic would collapse. And that barrier is arguably the most important magic in this graveyard. That said, the respected dead are not trapped here, like the other spirits. They cannot leave the cemetery, but they can pass on whenever they choose. Holy magic comes from goodness. Forcing their spirits to reside here would be an act of ill. They would not be able to produce holy magic without free will. The court of the respected dead is one of the only courts where souls are still buried, besides the malicious court. It doesn't happen often, but it can still happen. I believe the latest respected resident arrived 2 years ago. You'll notice that the graves here look immaculate. The holy magic keeps them in pristine condition, as well as produces quite a lovely assortment of flora. The soil here is rich and healthy, so the plants do quite well. If any begin to overtake a gravestone, you can trim them back a bit, but mostly you can leave them alone. The respected dead are fond of them, and it makes for a pleasant walk. Unlike the other courts, the respected dead do not wander beyond their own. By remaining here, they're able to keep the barrier strong. Holy magic is stronger when it's combined. If they spread out, it can create weak spots. By staying together, their magic is more powerful, and they are able to power the lines of holy magic, the ones we reviewed on the map, together, splitting the energy it takes among them. The most powerful of the dead here concentrate, projecting their power around those specific graves in the malicious court. Should the other respected dead wander, it could put a greater strain on them and dampen those barriers. Because of this, you won't have many random encounters with the respected. It takes a great deal of energy for the spiritual to interact with the physical, energy they'd prefer to use elsewhere. However, should you need their aid, they will provide it. If you need to speak to them, they are willing to communicate with you. And if you are in trouble, they will do what they can to help you. But try not to intrude on them too much. They also have a job to do. And if you do yours well, you shouldn't need their assistance. However, just to note, some of the respected dead are caretakers, some from this very graveyard even, chosen to be buried at their post, continuing the work from the other side. If you do have need to interact with the respected, they'll usually be the ones to show up. Now stop. Don't take another step yet. But look forward. What do you see? What do you notice? Yes, very good. Just ahead, the land is starkly different from where we are standing now. You are looking at the malicious court. Nothing good grows there. The land is scorched, dirt the color of rust and blood. The fog is denser. There will be no wading into it as it was coming from the gate to the respected court. There is a hard wall here. Once you pass through the barrier of the holy magic, you will feel much differently. Brace yourself, it may wind you. While the malicious power is kept at bay and in check in this court, its presence will still be felt. You may feel sick. Don't be alarmed or embarrassed if so. When you are ready, step forward. Well done. Deep breaths. You have entered the malicious court. Here lie the terrible, the dreadful, the corrupted. Souls said to be so devastatingly evil. Not even their spirits are allowed to wander. There is no peace here, no rest. There are a few ways someone might come to reside in this court. Some have been here since the unwritten era. Others damned by judge and jury. Many were executed, a number within this very court. Deeper in you will find an execution stage. If possible, executing a malicious within the graveyard tightens their chain to it, even more than just being buried here. And the souls are still buried here. Executions are still held. Like the respected court, however, it isn't often. But it does happen. You will likely witness one before the year is up. When someone is deemed destined for the malicious court, often a necromancer will be enlisted to bind the spirit to the body. The spirit will not be able to leave their physical form, even in death. They are trapped in their own rotting corpse. They cannot rise and they cannot project. It helps ensure that they will be unable to cause any havoc for a number of years before they're mostly decomposed. It makes transportation easier as well, prevents the spirits from escaping before they're able to be buried securely in a graveyard. Yes, it is a horrible fate, being bound to your corpse, to feel it rotting and decomposing. You lie in the darkness with the dirt in your lungs, the worms stripping your flesh, never to sleep, never to rest. It takes a long time for the body to decay enough to break the binding spell. But by then you're decades deep in the tainted soil of the malicious court, bound to your grave. But do not waste your sympathy, apprentice. Most here would offer you none. Harden your heart in the malicious court. There are far more malicious residents whose corpse binds have broken than not. It is your job to ensure they stay bound to their graves, despite their best efforts. There. You see that cluster of stones? They aren't spaced out like the normal headstones, and are peculiarly shaped. Those are uninvited graves. Many of them dwell on the border between the malicious and the respected. They are so tight together they couldn't actually denote a body beneath them unless they were piled on top of one another. But the graves are believed to serve as tethers to their corresponding spirits nonetheless. There are wards placed on them. They still look strong, but just so you know how, within your pack there is a red velvet bag. Within it are wooden charms, sigils burned into them. They're the same ones currently on the graves, but go ahead and place a few. You'll notice a couple of the charms look like they've burned away some. Go ahead and place the new ones right over top of them. They will adhere to the grave without assistance. It keeps the spirit that belongs to these graves tied to them, so they cannot wander far. You will know when the charms actually need replacing because they will burn up. The energy the spirits extend trying to pass the wards will turn the wood to ash. It takes a few nights to burn through them all the way. Good catch. I say believed to because the uninvited remain quite perplexing. The guild is not entirely sure why or how they appear, or where they come from, or even what they actually are. There is speculation, but not much actual information. They aren't believed to be souls like the rest. but rather some other entity who likely feeds on the particular brew of magic that exists in the graveyard. What is known is that they appear suddenly, and the entities are very active. They seem bound to much of the same laws spirits are, so they're dealt with much the same. Most random encounters you have will likely be with an uninvited spirit, or entity if you'd rather. They seem able to appear as anything, and they are mischievous if given the chance. Their pranks can range from harmless to hostile, and dispositions vary widely between them. But it is best not to gamble with them. One unbound uninvited can easily unbind the others, and it is not easy to get them all back under control. Come, let us move deeper in. In this court there is much work to do. Have you any observations of the graves here? Yes, very good. On each grave there is a glowing red symbol that looks burned into the stone. This is the binding rune. It is what keeps the spirits tethered to their graves. The brighter they glow, the stronger they are. Each of these graves must be checked every single night. How quickly the rune burns out depends on how much strength the malicious exerts. Sometimes it can take weeks. Sometimes a single night has it nearly extinguished. There's one there. See how its glow is dimming. Additionally, you will see that there are plants beginning to sprout over the grave. This happens as the entity gets closer to the surface, closer to breaking their bindings and emerging from their graves. In your bag, there is a crystal that looks like solidified fire. Take it out. That's it. If you move it around, you can see that the core of it is liquid. Take the point of the crystal and trace over the rune carved into stone to reapply it. Go ahead. Good job. Now there is a second step to this as well. In your pack, there is a bag of black salt. You must salt the earth of the grave. It will kill the flora blooming here and to make it harder for more to grow. These malice blooms will aid the dead in their attempt to break free of their bindings, and will spread quickly if left unattended. Like I said, nothing good grows here. Should you see anything blooming, cast the black salt upon it. Come, there's one more thing I wish to show you before we leave this court. No, not the execution stage. I won't be taking you there. You will see it another night, surely. I do not want to risk exposing you to it right now. The execution stage lies in the heart of the Malice Court, and it can make 1 week to approach. Until you acclimatize more to the environments here, I do not think it's suitable to show you. However, this I did want you to see. In this mausoleum lies one of the most powerful residents of the Court of Malice. This is one of those places the respected are channeling their holy magic to. As you can see, the mausoleum is covered in glowing runes, thousands of them. The evil confined within this is constantly trying to get out. That pressure you feel is the malice and the holy magic pushing against one another, locked in a battle for dominance. Endlessly they are fighting. This is why it is so important to let the respected do their work unimpeded. There are 6 of these mausoleums in the Malice Court. You must check them all regularly and salt the earth around them every night. I have checked the others and they need no tending. Even here you can see the earth is still well salted, but go ahead and cast another layer so you will know how it feels to be close to the mausoleum. Good work. It will take some getting used to, like most things. Let's move on. That feels better, doesn't it? It's like a great pressure has been lifted. We've left the Court of Malice. Now we've entered the Nameless Court. Like it suggests, the graves here have no information about who lies within them. There are no records of them. They are old. Not as old as the ancients, but nearly. Older than the written era, definitely. The fog is much thicker here, but the air is not nearly so heavy. Coming from the Malice Court, you may even feel relaxed, drowsy even. Be careful. The Nameless Court can be enticing. It has a way of lulling you into a sense of security. You must take great care to retain your senses. They are very easy to lose in the Nameless Court. While this court is not so actively malicious as the previous, it may be even more dangerous to you. Because it is so easy to lose yourself in this court, it is also very easy to forget your duties. This court clouds your mind. With time, you will gain greater fortitude against it. But for now, you are direly susceptible to it, which is why you must never come here alone. The magic here is old. My elven senses detect it as a faint song upon the wind, a lullaby being carried from somewhere deep in the distant past. It's best you don't listen for it too intently. It is a siren's call. The flora here is lush. Much of it glows as pale as the moon. All the graves are made of moonstone, except for the uninvited. If you'll recall on the maps, you could see a few clusters of them residing in this court. There are quite a number of them here. The majority, I would say. They easily stand out against the environment around them. Take note as we pass. All the charms should be in good condition, but it never hurts to check if you'll be near them anyway. The nameless don't need to be handled as harshly as the malicious, but with as much diligence. Should the ghosts or spirits of the nameless begin to wander, they will spread the effect of their court. You do not want the nameless bleeding into the malicious court. If their energies combined, it would be incredibly difficult to untangle them. For the most part, the nameless sleep. They are not bound so painfully to their graves as the dead in the previous court. That is why there is such a sense of serenity here. But keep alert lest you lie down and join them. The grounds have already been tended to here, so I cannot show you a good example. But you see the vines spread all over the land here. On them are radiant blooms of moonlight. These are everywhere in this court, and harmless. However, they are a good indicator if a nameless is awakening. Much like in the malicious court, you will see the energy of the nameless having an impact on the flora around them. You'll recall the flowering blooms of the respected as well. Plants within the graveyard, particularly within the cemetery, are very in tune with the energies of the dead. Nature exists on both sides of the veil. It exists in both worlds at once. If the dead are stirring in the spirit world, the plants will absorb that energy, and you will be able to see the effect of it by the way it grows. These bulbs you see here are fine. They grow with the residual energy the presence of the dead give off. But if you see larger blooms, or blooms that glow an unusual color, it will indicate activity. You will trim those. Like any garden, simply cut the blooms from the vine. You can leave it on the ground. Once it is cut, the mana within will disperse into the fog. Similarly to the malicious court, if left to bloom and grow, the flora would hoard the mana and create a feedback loop of power with the spirits, causing them to channel their energy and even manifest in the physical world, which you do not want. It upsets the balance of nature. Your job as caretaker is to maintain the balance and ensure the dead don't cross back over into the world of the living. The dead in these graveyards are not your average souls. They are powerful. Their presence alone, even in spirit form, has the ability to alter the laws of nature this side of the veil. If even just one manages to rise, they can act as a nexus point for others. Being the first is the hardest, but once one manages to do it, they can aid others in rising as well. And then it is easier with the two of them, and then with the three of them. Should enough manage to rise, it will be nothing for them to awaken the entire cemetery. Which is why it is so important to ensure that never happens. Good question. Yes, you will undoubtedly experience encounters, but these are mostly glimpses through the veil, like looking through a window to the other side. It also relieves some of the pressure from the energy concentrated within the spirit side of the cemetery. It takes a lot of energy for them to interact with the physical realm, but they can do it. It's important to make note of your encounters, because it means you'll want to be paying attention to the wards of whichever kind of spirit you've crossed paths with. It may indicate a new sigil needs drawn or the gardens tended. If it's reoccurring in the same places, it could indicate that some of the bigger underlying wards need refreshed by a true mage. So keep well your records. Now, once the offending bulbs have been trimmed, you will want to pour a blessing over the grave. In your pack should be a water skin. It's black with silver stars embroidered onto it. You will want to pour some over the grave where you sheared the blooms. There were no blooms cut tonight, but you can still do this. Go ahead and pour it over a grave. It is an unusual liquid, isn't it? Similar to ink, but it shimmers so brightly. This is liquid night. It's soothing to the nameless. It is a stark contrast dripping over the moonstone graves, but it will turn pure silver as it's exposed to the moonlight. It's quite lovely. As I said, it is soothing to them. If they are growing restless, it will ease them back into a more subdued state. There are no active wards or sigils to be placed on the graves here. Simply watch for the signs of restlessness and anoint accordingly. Easy enough, yes? Just remember my warnings. Do not come here alone. You won't have the fortitude for it for quite some time. Even experienced caretakers can fall prey to the trap. More than once, a caretaker has failed to check in with the Geminus, and a unit was dispatched, only to find the caretaker either wandering or sleeping in the nameless court. Come, I have one more to show you. It is the last, but we must be quick. Hold. One more step and we enter the ancient court. Before we cross over, I need to discuss a few things with you. Because once we are there, I won't be able to tell you anything. Do not speak in the ancient court. Not a word. Among the ancients, you are to move quickly and quietly. You want to do your work here and leave. Ideally before they've even noticed you. As you can see, the fog is extremely thick here. The air will be heavy. In some places it may feel like you're nearly swimming in it. It's all that residual power the ancients seep into the physical world. There are no graves in the ancient court, only mausoleums. Yes, like the ones in the malicious court. It is likely those ones in the malicious court are ancients themselves. They were not built by the guild, and there is no record of their origins or who slumbers within. You'll notice them to be quite similar to the ones in the ancient court, though the ones here are not so graffitied with all those runes. The runes are also not creations of the guild, but they are used by them as a template for warding the graveyard, and the guild refreshes them as they grow dull. But the original runes, who carved them and the origin of their magic system, is unknown to the guild. It is also unknown why they are not allowed to rest in the ancient court. You can only speculate, but don't dwell on it for too long. You want to try and keep your mind clear while within the ancient court. Either completely empty or hyper-focus on one thing. Allowing your mind to wander here is inviting trouble. You do not want the magic seeping into your consciousness. If you are unable to keep your mind blank, try repeating a recipe or an equation. A song may help, but songs can be too simple, too familiar. You may find your mind branching from them even as you play it in your head. Mathematics or alchemy tend to be the most effective. Now, listen closely because this is important. Do not touch the mausoleums. Regardless of how they seem or what you're thinking, do not touch them. Unlike the previous courts, you will not be interacting with the graves at all here. It may even appear on one of them that the door has opened. Doesn't matter. Don't touch it. Whatever is binding the ancients here, it's not the mausoleums. The only thing you will be doing here is reinforcing the already existing lines of magic. In certain points through the court, where the magic ley lines intersect, are obsidian obelisks. They're not too big, about half as tall as you and thin enough to wrap your arms around. They're magic linchpins far as the guild can tell. They keep the web of magic woven in the ancient court locked together. They're pure obsidian, enchanted, witching glass, I think. Similar to the kind used for scrying. Don't gaze into them for too long. Around the obelisks is a band of glowing silver. The stake should be driven into the ground until this band touches the earth. Sometimes it rises up, being pushed out of the earth. Your job is to drive it back in until it sits where it's supposed to. A simple mallet will do. It's in your pack. I doubt any of them need driving right now, but go ahead and retrieve it just in case. This mallet is ordinary except for one thing. There is a silencing spell on it, so it will make no noise regardless of how hard you strike. As I mentioned, you want to be silent here. Don't draw attention to yourself more than necessary. The silencing spell helps with that. Do you understand all of that? Do you have any questions? Keep your lantern in hand. This light is the only thing that will pierce the fog here. Ready your mallet in the other. Stay close to me and don't wander. You have an equation or a recipe in your mind. Good. I'll point out any stakes that need attention. I'll lead you around and we'll come back out in a nameless court. Ready? Let's go. You did well, apprentice. How do you feel? Yes, the magic sticks to you. Feels like cobwebs, yes? It will pass. We'll head back to the house now. We'll be taking a different route than we used going into the cemetery. I wanted you to feel the differences in atmosphere and power in each court. But there are multiple paths around the cemetery that follow the lines of magic. Right now, we've come out onto one of them. Can you tell? Think on it as you walk it. Consider how it feels. Yes, very good. It's holy magic. This path sits atop one of the lines of it. Following it will lead you right back to the respected court and right back to the entrance. You'll get more in tune with the subtleties of magic as you're more exposed to it. It'll be your main point of navigation in the graveyard, regardless of where you're at in the cemetery or how thick the fog, or whatever else may be hindering your movements. Being able to discern the lines of magic will allow you to follow them wherever you need to go. All those maps in the study are useful at showing you where they are. Don't worry, you won't be expected to remember it right away. But do expend the effort. It will prove useful to you. As you can see, we're passing through the Malice Court now. But you don't feel that same dreadful feeling as you did the first time you passed into it, do you? That's because you're on the holy path. It keeps the aura of the malice away. It might be tempting to only use the holy paths, but they're best reserved for leaving. You want to acclimatize to the effects the different courts have on your body. Plus, your chores won't be within the paths. You may miss things if you're only walking. How are you feeling? Good. The holy paths also help to pull off any lingering magic energy on you as well. It's cleansing to walk through it. We're coming out through the respected court now. Come, we'll walk through on our way back to the house. Yes, it does feel rejuvenating to come through this way after walking the cemetery. Much of the other magic energy from the other courts don't have the ability to withstand holy magic, so it's purified from you. No doubt you didn't even realize how heavy it had become. It can wear down on you and pile up faster than you realize. Careful not to become the frog in the boil. Some nights will have you far more preoccupied than others. It's a good idea to take breaks and visit a section of holy magic now and then. You don't want too much negative or unnatural energy piling up on top of you. And with that, apprentice, you have officially made it in and out of the cemetery. Very few have accomplished that. How do you feel? A bit tired. That's to be expected. There is the house. Why don't you go inside and rest? There are some things I need to take care of, so I'll leave you for now. But you won't be alone long. Not very long at all, actually. It was a pleasure, apprentice. Welcome to the graveyard. See you soon. Hey. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry that I'm late. I got here as fast as I could. There was an emergency. The guild was supposed to delay your coming until tomorrow night, but somehow it got all mixed up. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to escort you from the dock. I got here as fast as I could. I took a horse from the village to the border and I drank 3 swift potions and ran. I stopped at the dock first, but I saw the boat was already tied in, so I came straight here. I hope you haven't been here long. Oh, okay, good. Good. I'm glad you're okay. I was worried, but you seem to be doing all right. I know this can be a spooky place, though, so I didn't want you getting freaked out or wandering off and getting lost. Since it's much later than I intended, why don't you just rest for now? We'll go over some of the more clerical details, and then we'll get deeper into the cemetery tomorrow. I had intended to give you a small tour of it, but it's not going anywhere. I did check the wards before I left earlier, so nothing should be pressing right now. We can go over the records, the maps, the procedures, those sorts of things. I'll make you something to eat, and you can settle into your bunk, too. Yes, the maps of the magic lines. It'll show you how it's structured through the cemetery. Did you already see them? Good, good. It gives us a jumping off point to start from. Once we've finished going over that aspect, I prepared a pack. Oh, you already have it. Good to know you're enthusiastic, but I'm glad I caught you before you ventured off with it. It can be dangerous to go into the graveyard alone. Plus, the items in there have to be used a certain way. They're not really your average groundskeeping equipment. There's the wooden charms and the flame crystal and the salts. Yeah, for the uninvited dead. And the crystal and the salt is for... Right, for the malice court. There's some other stuff in there too we'll need to go over. Yeah, the liquid night and the mallet. Wow, you really know your stuff. I'm impressed. Usually the guild doesn't teach you the specifics before you accept the position. I guess they thought if the apprentices went in a little more prepared, they'd find it an easier introduction. I think it's a good idea. I've been saying for years there ought to be some classes at headquarters before the apprentices are actually shipped off to the cemetery. I suppose they thought it would finally be worth a shot since we've been bleeding so many. We've been so short-handed in the graveyards. The messages spoke highly of you though, so I don't think you'll have any problems. I'm just glad I caught you when I did. Even though they may have taught you some things, it's not a good idea to go off by yourself. I appreciate your eagerness, but it is a dangerous place. Not a good idea for a new apprentice to roam the grounds alone. They probably didn't stress a lot of that to you because they didn't want to spook you. Not that I want you spooked. So long as you follow procedure, you'll really have nothing to worry about. But it is a place that demands caution. And the magic here can mess with you, especially if you're not used to it. So I don't want you going off anywhere by yourself. What do you mean you just got back? Where did you go? You went all the way to the ancient court. Well, I'm glad you're all right. You really shouldn't have... It's not your fault. It's mine. I really should have been here. I don't know how things got so mixed up. Going that far into the cemetery, though, that's dangerous for you. I'm glad you're okay, but you very easily could have not been. So, that's rule number 1. Don't go off by yourself. Don't go into the cemetery without me there to guide you. I don't want you going anywhere outside the house alone. At least not for a while. What do you mean you weren't alone? Who's with you? The other caretaker. An elf. And this elf, she took you into the cemetery. She's the one who told you about the maps and the tools. She had you draw runes. Did she come here with you? Did she arrive on the boat? She was here, waiting for you. She was here at the entrance, not in... That's not... Where is she now? No, listen to me, apprentice. There is no one else here. I am the only caretaker.